Hello again, welcome back. Here we are, TooFatLardies Advent Calendar, and now we have reached day 21, December the 21st, 2024. The shortest day of the year, which means that from here on in, certainly in the UK, the days get longer, more daylight as we head towards the summer. A nice thought when we haven't even got past Christmas yet. So day 21, let's see what's behind the window for day 21. Open the window on the calendar and it says Space Race. When do you think you'll run out of hobby storage space and what happens then? Well, I think the elves have been very naughty here because this actually isn't a hypothetical question as far as I'm concerned, because I have genuinely run out of space in which to store my wargaming collection, and I am rapidly running out of ideas. You know, most of my stuff is stored in my garage, which has become a TARDIS, and if you open the door to it, you would be amazed at what you saw inside. So making me reflect on this is going to be painful. And I think I'm going to take two angles on it. The first angle is, how do you get to the point where you have so much stuff? And secondly, what can you do to maximise your storage so that you can at least enjoy what you have? I think space has always been a premium in a hobby like ours, where there is so much joy to be had from new things. You know, new rule sets, new items of terrain, new armies, new Kickstarters coming up, new battle mats, and the ever growing requirement for books and the growth of the reading library. My house is full of books. I find it totally amazing when we go to friends' houses and I see no books whatsoever. In fact, it actually makes me feel quite sad. Books have always been a key part of my life. And not just the reading of them, but also the feeling that comes from collecting them and just having them around me. There's something very tangible, isn't there, about a book, and even more so if that book can connect you to an event, perhaps a personalised account or a signed copy, or one that's got a bit of history behind it itself. It almost becomes part of the story that it's telling. I'm very lucky, actually, that my library contains some signed copies of books relating to the battles that fascinate me. And my library's grown and developed over the years and now covers a multitude of topics of battles and histories that interest me. It's quite eclectic, really. Big gaps that span hundreds of years, and then lots of books on a particular topic. Of course, the more you read, the more you discover. And the more you discover, the more you want to read, and the more targeted your reading has to become. Generic books no longer really interest me, and this is going to make me sound like some kind of intellectual snob, but I really don't bother these days much when I go to the local Waterstones to look at the military history section, because I just know that the books that are there, although they might be interesting reads, are not going to the depth on the topics that I'm interested in, and that my kind of expert geeky needs are best met elsewhere, mostly by grabbing copies of hard to find books or books that are no longer in print. This makes them rare, and because they're rare, you know, there's something that I feel an even stronger sense of connection with. I've now started to catalogue my books, and you know, over 500 of them. The shelves and cupboards of my house are now starting to struggle, and I'm having to be extremely selective with the books that I now allow into my collection. I know this is something that affects lots of us. This restriction means that I'm having to combine finding new books with the process of removing older books from the collection, and whilst I find this really quite hard, I do at least take some solace from the knowledge that most information can now be gleaned on the internet. So is that a hope for the future? Well, maybe, but once again, as the more generic texts are starting to find their way out of the door, in the vain hope, for me at least, that leaves me with enough room to potentially add some more books, because the idea of not being able to add any would seriously depress me. I enjoy audiobooks, but I do find that a lot of the reference material that we seek is just not available in that format. And there's also a certain joy in seeking out books which are long out of print. Then, of course, we move to the physical materials of wargaming itself, figures and terrain. I am really very jealous. The Green-Eyed Monster comes out for those people who have a dedicated gaming space or dedicated garden office or a dedicated basement or a dedicated loft that they've put over to wargaming. But for me, being the father in a large family, I just simply don't have that space available to me. I'm extremely envious also of those of us who are able to display their wonderful painted armies in glass-fronted, glass-shelved cabinets. What a wonderful thing that would be. But this has never been an option for me, sheerly because of the volume and the need to acknowledge the other people with whom I share my house do have a claim on the space too, and would not necessarily wish their decor to be simply filled with cases of rank-and-file bayonets. I've always had the necessity to store my stuff in boxes, and over the years I've tried many different types of boxes, but it now tends to come down to two dependable methodologies. The first is the ubiquitous, really useful box in all its forms, whatever literage. But I do find the 4-litre boxes are excellent for armoured vehicles, and I have lots of these, probably more than I care to count, and probably more than 50. The 9-litre and 12-litre boxes are also extremely useful, and at the same time portable enough to be used to take things in and out of convention halls or places where games are being played. The older I get, the closer I like to be able to park to the game that we're putting on, and lugging boxes and boxes in and out is not much fun. I do find now that the shallower the box, the better, because if boxes are too deep, the tendency is to put things on top of each other, and that generally leads to damage. And that's especially true when you're putting things away quickly, when you want to finish at a venue. But of course, when you have so many boxes that all look the same, what you really need is some kind of filing system to enable you to go to the right box when you want it. Sadly, I've never mastered any of that. So whenever I want anything, I have to move everything to find what I want. And that, of course, ends up that the box that I want is at the very back and at the very bottom. When it comes to figures, I've now moved to the cardboard figure storage boxes, the ones with the foam inserts. I made the move away from Stanley toolboxes probably about a dozen years ago now. I had found these really useful figure cases as they were compartmentalised and stacked nicely, but I do find that the extra protection that comes from the foam inserts in the boxes is really the way to go. That said, however, my 15mm World War II collection is still stored in a Bisley filing cabinet, the ones with the narrow drawers, metal filing cabinet. This has proved a really excellent place to store them, actually, but it isn't a cheap option and really not viable for a solution going forward. But it isn't really the figures that cause me the problem, if I'm honest. It's the massive growth of terrain, and most pointedly amongst this is the massive growth in terrain that occurred when we did the Arnhem Games at the Hartenstein Hotel a few years ago, because I now have most of the Oosterbeek perimeter in miniature stacked in my garage. 3D printing has a lot to answer for, and I noticed that much of my storage is now taken up with intriguing items of terrain that might make tables look wonderful, but also add to my storage problems. And this is an area where I'm extremely weak-willed when it comes to purchases. I love these bespoke terrain builds. I love making the farms, the houses, the factories, the dockyards, the hotels, the workshops, the railway yards, even the gliders that grace our tables. It is, after all, the terrain that pulls passers-by towards your table. But whilst I can bring myself to part with books, I can accept that I won't refer to them. I can't do the same with terrain or figures. I've always found it very difficult to sell items that I've created, because I just know that as soon as I sell them, I want to go back to them again. I did sell an AWI collection that I had in 15mm many years ago now, but whilst I don't begrudge the sale of that, it did leave a hole in my psyche that means I'll find it difficult to sell additional collections. A wise man once said to me that for future events, we should make the terrain for the game and then auction it off at the event. What a brilliant idea, I thought. What a brilliant idea that is. But it's a brilliant idea for other people. I just can't see myself parting with something that I've laboured over so long. That said, it might have to be considered a serious option because quite literally I cannot fit another battlefield in my garage. And moving house is not an option. So what does that mean for storage? Well, it means I've had to be quite strict with what I have allowed myself to get interested in. I told myself I would only buy figures for existing collections, to grow and deepen those, and whilst I haven't been totally successful in that, I would say there's been some positive impact. I've also been just as ingenious as I can with storage, from repurposing bookcases to buying stackable supermarket-style plastic delivery trays simply to maximise storage space. And this has had an unusual byproduct, because by becoming a bit of a space and storage expert, I can now pack a dishwasher in a way that no other person could match. You won't believe how much I can squeeze into a dishwasher. You won't believe how I can ensure that every space in that dishwasher is utilised, and yet the items still come out pristine and clean. I joke with my wife and tell her that this is solely because of the storage challenges created by my wargaming collection. She smiles the kind of smile that tells me she wishes the garage was full of old bikes and garden furniture. But what a waste of space that would be. So, what more can you do? Have I got too much stuff? Yes. Will I keep on getting more stuff? Yes. Will I always have this problem of storage? Yes. But isn't that just the wargaming way?